We want to take first the issues on electricity. Averaging 4,500 megawatts in the past 8 years, Nigerians looking forward to improve electricity supply may continue to wait as inherent challenges may stall power generation. Although electricity is considered a major determinant of economic development, as access to electricity is expected to catalyze nations in the drive for industrialization, supply to homes and businesses remain dismal in Nigeria on the backdrop of a flawed privatization exercise. While Nigeria had introduced a service-based tariff late in 2020, on the premise that electricity supply would improve, the prevailing situation created a worse experience for consumers. What are the issues? Sunday Oduta is the Executive Director of Research and Advocacy Association of the Nigerian Electricity Distributor, ANED. He joins us in the studio to look at these issues. It's a pleasure to have you join us again this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Thank you. You are a namesake, so this makes it even more special a discussion for this morning. We have had all kinds of front and back with regards to the issue of electricity. And 1 minute we are blaming the privatization process, the next minute the blame is on the stables of the government for not meeting its own part of the obligations with regards to intervention in the power sector. The minute after, the only things we hear about is one kind of collapse or the other, practically bringing the countries down on its knees. I mean, and for the average Nigerian, these things just look like another Nigerian drama. Nothing makes sense if you cannot put up the bulb in your room and see light. What exactly is the problem with us?
Thank you very much. My namesake, Sunday. We have had, you and I, we have had engagement over the last 7 years. The issues are still the same. And what we keep on saying is that even if you bring angel or malaika from heaven to come and manage the Nigerian power sector, unless certain things are done by those who are supposed to do it, unless we stop politicizing the issue of power or electricity in this country, we'll continue to say the same thing over and over. Now, let me start by saying that as ANED, yes, we are the umbrella body of the discourse, 11 of them. But we do not waste time in blaming them where they get things wrong. And I'll start with them for you to know that I'm not here to polish or to put blame on anybody or any. So, but let me start with my own people. The discourse, as we have them today, are not efficient enough. In fact, in some cases, even though we have invested so much money on staff training, you go to some of our outlets, whether you're in Abuja, Katsina, Ilorin, or Port Harcourt, you get some of the staff behaving as if they are doing you a favor. People come to your house to give you bill and they're so on couch, and you just see a kind of orientation that is totally different from what we even continuously train them and teach them to do. So it is a Nigerian thing. Again, I'm proud to be a Nigerian, but we have a long way to go in terms of how we deal with customers, how we even talk to ourselves. But there are 3 groups of people that have special role to play if indeed Nigeria want to have electricity. Number 1 group is the government at all levels. Government and the agencies that are owned by them, including the regulator, the representative of government as far as this issue of privatization is concerned, is known as the PPP, Bureau of Public Enterprise. It is ironical when you see them issuing statements signed by the DG of BP, who indeed is part of what we are doing, rightly or wrongly, because for every disco, there are BP directors on the board. So every time people turn around and blame discos, the question I ask is that, are those directors sleeping? Every time crucial decisions are taken by the board of directors of those companies. Instead of us to come out and say, you know what, we've gotten so many things wrong. Let's see what we can do rightly. What BP and others are doing, encouraged by the government, using the so-called banks, is to do a simple renationalization of the privatization through the back door. You can renationalize. You can take it back to NEPA days, but do it through the front door. If you want to greet my father, come. I'm an Egba man from Abeokuta. So pardon me if we have to talk sometime. We use proverbs to drive home our points as Africans. If you want to greet my father in the night, please knock the front door and it shall be open. Because we will answer you. But if you go through the back door under the cover of darkness, using other means that are not legal, then we'll speak out and say, come on, let's work together. Solution is what we need to find, not naming, blaming, and claiming. Okay? Number one, privatization was flawed from day one. Part of it was that the investors were shortchanged because they were given insufficient and, in most cases, incorrect data by the BP, and those are the midwife of the privatization. Again, if you go to a maternity ward, the professionalism of the midwife is very crucial to the survival of the babies, newborn babies in the maternity center. If the midwife there are busy doing other things while a woman is in labor, then you end up with a lot of stillbirth babies. So they gave them information that were totally incorrect. If you remember,
just before you go on with that, just so that we don't lose track of it. I know that in an acquisition, the acquirer also has his own team that should be able to do a due diligence on what they're acquiring.
That's where I'm
Was
going.
it that, to bring home the question now, is it that they acted in good faith by just taking everything that was given to them? Were they not giving rooms to have gone back to ascertain the position of things so that they are able to make informed?
Thank you very much. If you recall, at that time, the unions were against the government privatizing the electricity sector.
Okay.
And they prevented the potential investors. I'm not an investor. And to be honest, because of what I know, going by my own experience in this sector in the United Kingdom, I wouldn't have even purchased this kind of assets, knowing what I know. But they were prevented from accessing the sites, the location. It was a major issue. And then the government promised them, don't worry, come on board, pay. When you come on board, then we'll now do what they call baseline studies. I want to believe that the government meant well that time. And the investors also acted in good faith. But the problem began to happen when, number one, the government refused to implement that baseline studies. But that was what was supposed to come out and show things that they did not see. They were not able to see, things that they were prevented from seeing. That was that. Like I said earlier, this is not about blaming anybody. But if we don't know the issues, it is very easy for anybody to come here and then talk about the disco. And every time, what you hear in Nigeria is disco, disco, disco. Because we're the one that people know. We're the one that come face to face with Nigerians, so while others in the value chain are not seen. But the action of one unit of the value chain impact on the others. So from generation to transmission to distribution. We are not good enough as discos. Transmission is also bad enough. Generation is also bad enough. All of us, we have a lot of things. So it is about the government itself. Because the government, number one, the ministry, department, and agency debt are not paid. If you calculate how much that is, and you put that into the sector, we'll be better off today than we are. So there are a lot of things that the government failed to do. And the moment we have a contract, and you sign the contract, but you refuse or you fail to perform your own side of the contract, that performance by you will affect my own performance too. Because in the case of the power sector, what they said was that the performance of our own performance that was listed by the government is predicated on the government fulfilling their own commitment.
Obligation.
And I mentioned MDA debt. They promised that will be cleared. They also
That was
promised
the
that
debt for proper
Ministry-
contextualization. These debts, were they debts pre-privatization
we
or
have
post-privatization?
pre-privatization, we have post-privatization. And the best way to know that is check all the military cantonments in the country. Ikeja cantonment is there. They are here in Abuja. Go to Kaduna. They are not paying electricity bill. So all these, those are military. We have all others, paramilitary, other government agencies. And we're saying that these debts need to be cleared. So they promised, they never did. Right? 2013 from November 1. Not only that, they promised that the disco books were going to be debt-free. That is, the legacy debt on those books will not be carried forward so that the discos can have access to financing. That didn't happen. Then, number 3, cost-reflective tariff. Simple means the product, because electricity is a product. What we are saying is that every product has a cost to it, landing cost. Let Nigerians know the landing cost. What is the landing cost? What is the cost per unit, per kilowatt hour of electricity? Now, the selling price should reflect the landing cost. That is what is known as cost-reflective tariff. The tariff should reflect the cost of production and the landing cost. What happened? Up to today, go and check the foreign exchange that they use in computing the tariff. And over 70% of equipment used in the power sector are purchased from abroad. If you look at what they use, today, dollar is not less than 710 naira to $1. Go and check from our regulators. Go to their website. You will see them using 400 and something naira. That is not a reality in the country today. It wasn't the reality then. Over and over time, even when they do their adjustment, they still don't make it to reflect our reality. That is part of the problem. Now, we also had a long period of regulatory inconsistencies. With respect to the regulators, let me say from day one, the first set of regulators, second set, third set, now we have the fourth set. They are good Nigerians, good professionals, nice people. It's not about them as individuals. It's about the structure of this country, the way we do things. If you have the federal government, there's no regulatory independence. Those guys that you see there, they still act like civil servants. There are many things that they cannot do on their own in their building, without interference from the powers that be. That's part of the problem, and I will mention a few of those regulatory inconsistencies. For 3 years, minor reviews were not implemented, and this was clearly stated in the law. This is part of the MITO, multi-year tariff order. Now, when you have set a rule, and you don't even follow your own rule, what will be the result? That happened. Collection losses were removed from the tariff at a point. And like I said the foreign exchange was not effectively done to reflect our reality. Indeed, all these challenges that I've mentioned made BP and NEC, they agreed that there has to be 2 years of mutual non-performance. So the year 2017 and 2018 were classified as mutual non-performance. That's an admission of regulatory inconsistencies, an admission that we have all failed, an admission that we are not properly regulated, an admission that we set the sector to fail. That is the truth. And following that, DISCOs, of course, were not in control of their cash collection. We are collection agents. We collect. But an agreement was made. They call it waterfall agreement. The water flow from the top, but DISCOs are put at the bottom of that waterfall. That is to say, they will settle all other players in the sector before the DISCOs. What happened now is that what the DISCOs get is not even enough for their operational expenses, talk less of capital expenditure. And that's why you see communities buying their own poles, communities contributing money to repair their transformers. It is not normal. It's not something that we want as DISCOs. I will not sit down here and tell people of Abeokuta that they should continue to pay money to repair their transformer. It should be our duty as discos. But this thing, the toxic nature of the business as it is today, are things that make it very, you cannot tie my legs and expect me to run. If you want me to sing, don't put padlock in my mouth. For us to get it right, I think we all need to sit down and look at the issues. You see, I've seen a very good man, a gentleman who came here but the bulk of what the good man said, our director, now a new PAMSEC from the Ministry of Power, who was there, what he said, the bulk of it, he was trying to push everything to the discourse. It's not about the discourse.
Well, talking about the discourse.
Transmission, I would say, I would need to mention that at the beginning of the privatization, the government promised that they will give up transmission for it to be privately managed. If your child, your son is a naughty son, is not doing well at home, take him to a boarding house. When you take your child to a boarding house, that child is still yours, but he will be properly trained, better managed. They failed to do that. And if you go and ask the question about Manitoba, that they first brought into the country, what happened? People are not asking questions. So with that kind of situation, we cannot continue to have generation mainly private, transmission in the middle, 100% government owned, distribution, 60% private, 40% government. What is the 40% people doing? We run it together. And when they want to take an action, what do they say? They say private companies. So these are the issues. And I want Nigerians to just understand that we are saying that for us to get to where we need to be, because I also know that privatization is a journey, and it's a long journey. Even Nigerians, when I was mentioning groups that can make things right, I said number one is government. Number two is we, the operators, inefficient, and a lot of things are going on that are not supposed to be going on. That's number two. Number three, Nigerians themselves, the customers. If you're a consumer of electricity and you're not really willing to be paying for that electricity, you won't get the electricity. And when you get it, and you keep on stealing the same energy, because the rate of energy theft in Nigeria is so high. But the same Nigerian will say, give us light first, we will pay. Give us prepaid meter. 40% of prepaid meters are bypassed. So these are issues that we all need to look at. And when you look at it, we see that all of us need to collaborate, align, and work together to ensure a better power sector.
So I wanted to ask a question earlier concerning the discos. A while back, we heard that a couple of discos were taken over by certain entities. What happened there?
Well, first of all, when the news broke, if you go back online, you'll see some newspapers, including Daily Trust, some came out to say government has taken over 5 discos. Immediately, agent of government came out and said, no, we have nothing to do with it. It's the banks. Following that, a few hours later, BP Director General and NEC Chairman signed a joint statement saying that we align with the action of the bank. We are all Nigerians, we know ourselves, and we know how things happen. Everything that was done was no doubt done by the government, okay? And the malam that came here a few days ago, maybe yesterday, the director of investment at the Federal Ministry of Power alluded clearly to that, okay? But that is not even our issue. Our issue is that we're saying that they call it restructuring. The so-called restructuring was totally inconsistent with the failure of the government to perform their own part of the agreement, which led to the challenges faced by the discourse. Okay. That's number one. And we also believe that, like I said, government has a director on the board of all the discourse, which means we run it together. We also know that there's a designed process through which you can remove directors of a company, a PLC, or even any company, even it's a common limited liability company. There are procedures and processes through which you do that. That didn't happen in this case. So that's why we say this is just simply a backdoor takeover of assets and renationalization.
Moving forward, as we wind down on this segment of the program, we've had calls over the last 9 years thereabout to review what seemed to be like the modus operandi of the power sector, as opposed to other privatizations that we have seen in the country. And people kept saying, if we had always said privatization was going to be the solution, they're beginning to change their perception with regards to everything that has gone on with the power sector and all the things that you have listed here this morning. So, what is the way forward? Is it in government further divesting from its 40% shares of this disco and just meeting the obligations of the old debt? They do that. Does it solve this problem? Or do we need a restructuring that reorders the operations completely from the way it is? Because some of the blames have also put these things on the grid systems that we run, generating power from one end, sending it to another end before it is redistributed. What do you think something else has to change, for us to begin to see the proper dividends of this?
Well, it will interest us to know that a major problem why when they wanted to privatize this sector, they went around the world, South Africa, London, New York, Canada, everywhere, looking for investors. The question is, how come investors didn't come? How come that at the end of the day, Nigerians like us were the people who put their money in, paid cash in dollars, billions in dollars to purchase the assets? These Oyibo people didn't come because they said certain things very clearly. That time, 2013, they said that Nigerian government does not respect the sanctity of contract. With the backdoor takeover now, you can see the meaning of that. They said that their policy on certainty and somersault in Nigeria. They also said that the government lacked the commitment to implementing cost-reflective tariff. They cannot put their money in a business where they cannot recoup their investment. Every investor wants that investment to succeed. Because if you put your money in an investment, as a disco investor, I want my disco to work well, do things rightly, so that I can make money. Not this kind of system where I'm not making money, people are also abusing me, and government will just come one day and take it over through the back door, using other illegal means. So they also said that we cannot continue to have a government-run transmission company, which is why I said, if your son is known to not do well, he's not doing well at home, take him to a boarding house, a good boarding house. Government need to give up TCN, not sell it, not necessarily, but let it be managed by private company that will do the right thing. You still retain your control. The Malam here spoke about security. We know that. But to say that because of security of information that will go out to the public, do not allow Trust TV, Channel TV or TVs to operate in Nigeria. We need only NTA. That's not the issue. It is how the NBC regulates the television station or media station that will determine the result. So we think the government needs to have a rethink and do what is right, or else we'll be ending on litigation upon litigation, and that is not good for the nation. Nigeria wants electricity.
True. Thank you very much, Mr. Sunday Duta. I'm sorry I have to cut you there. That is how much time would allow us take this morning. From my interaction with Mr. Sunday over the last 7 years, I can assure you that he's coming from a well-oiled reservoir and can continue to engage these issues for the next hour if we had the time. But we'll find another time to bring him here to begin to explore solutions as regards solving the Nigeria power debacle. We've been talking with Mr. Sunday Oduto of the Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors. He's the Executive Director, Research and Advocacy. It's been a pleasure having you in the studio.